Hey guys, we're back with another episode of Santa S.O.S, which was written by Linda Ford. It's a scholastic book, so we read the first 3 chapters. So we just read, and the police thinks it's a joke. So we're going to go to the next chapter, chapter number 4. And this chapter is called, Chapter 4, What I Didn't Know at the Time. Ouch! Granddad felt a lump on his head. What happened? Hello, said a voice. He scrambled out of the snowbank and saw a little girl, about 7 or 8. Hello, he answered. What's your name? I'm Jessica, she told him, and I already know who you are. You do? Granddad scratched his aching head. The girl knew who he was. That was good because he didn't know. He couldn't remember his name or who he was or where he came from. Who am I? He asked her. You're Santa Claus, she replied. Then she leaned forward and whispered, Don't worry, I won't tell anyone you're here. Granddad smiled. She was a cute little girl with brown pigtails and dark brown eyes. He looked down at himself. No wonder she was confused. He was wearing a red suit and black boots. I better go, Jessica said. I'll see you on Christmas Eve. Granddad sighed. He'd have to go into town and ask around. One of the stores had probably hired him to play Santa Claus. They'd know who he was. He walked into town and saw a sign that said Huntsville. The name didn't sound familiar, and after a while he came to a large department store. Am I your Santa Claus? He asked one of the salesmen. Huh? Said the salesman. He was very busy and barely stopped. Our Santa's over there, he pointed to a big cardboard sled where people were taking pictures of their children. Granddad walked all over town and asked at every store he found. Everyone already had their Santa Clauses, or they hadn't hired one yet. But he was offered 2 jobs for the Christmas season. I have an idea, he said to himself. I'll go to... Where's he going to go? I'll go to the costume shop. I must have rented this costume from someone. The bell of the costume shop tinkled like a Christmas chime. An old man sat behind the counter. Did I rent this costume from you? Asked Granddad. Don't you remember? The man asked back. To tell you the truth, I don't, he answered. I had a little accident and I can't remember my name. But I thought I might have rented this costume from you, and you know who I am. Wish I could help, said the man. Wish I could help, said the man, but that's not one of my costumes. It's much nicer than anything I've got for rent. Granddad was disappointed. Are there any more costume shops in town? Nope, I have the only one. Thanks anyway, Granddad said as he headed outside. It was getting dark, and he didn't know what to do. Besides, his head was hurting. Up and down the streets he walked, looking at faces, thinking maybe he would recognize someone. He didn't. It grew very late and all the stores closed. Granddad headed for the park, figuring he'd have to sleep on a bench. He was lucky the Santa Claus suit was so warm, but he'd rather have a bed. In the middle of the night, someone shook his shoulder. Wake up, old man, a voice said. You can't sleep on park benches. It was a policeman. Granddad groaned. Where could he go? He walked around some more and found the bus depot. He was so tired he just sat right down on a bench, leaning against the wall, and closed his eyes. The next morning, he felt stiff and sore from sleeping while sitting up. He groaned and straightened himself. Hi, Santa, a cheery voice called. He blinked his eyes and looked across the room at the woman behind the ticket counter. Hello, he managed to say. Are you okay? Well, I had some kind of accident yesterday, and I can't seem to remember my name. What did the police say? Of course, he felt foolish. His family must have told the police he was missing. All he had to do was go to the station. He probably could have spent last night home in bed instead of sleeping on a bench. I'm going over there right now. Good luck. He had to stop to ask for directions, but it was only a short way. He walked inside, butterflies twitching in his stomach. Am I missing? He asked the woman at the desk. You don't seem to be, she answered. No, I mean, has someone reported me as missing? I hit my head yesterday, and I can't remember my name. How about Santa Claus? Very funny. Sorry, were you wearing that costume when you got hurt? Yes. Okay, I'll check the missing persons report. Have a seat in the waiting area. I'll find someone to take your fingerprints. Granddad sat in the waiting area, there where some wanted posters on the wall. It gave him a creepy feeling. How did he know if he was wanted or not? Maybe he was a terrible criminal. Maybe that was why he was wearing a costume to hide who he was. He tugged at his fake beard. He didn't want to turn out to be a bad person. Not being a criminal was definitely better than being a criminal, especially when you're sitting in a police station. Chapter 5. Things haven't changed between Donna and me. Seeing the sleigh brought it all back to me. The nausea, I mean. I didn't even have to ride in it. Just seeing it was enough to make me airsick and a bit wobbly in the knees. I'm not a coward, really. At least I don't think so. I ride in planes with no problems. My bedroom's on the 3rd story, and I can do more stunts on my skateboard than any guy in school. Plus, I'm the only one in my house who'll empty the mousetraps. I just don't like going up in a sleigh flown by reindeer. There's nothing to hold you in. A thought nibbled at the edge of my brain, then slid away when I saw the reindeer wranglers eyeing me. By now, Granddad had probably gotten around to telling the North Pole staff that Marcia was going to be Santa instead of me, and I'll bet they all cheered when they heard the news. We didn't exactly get along last summer, but hopefully Granddad hadn't told them I was nervous about heights. That'd be too embarrassing. To preserve my pride, I pretended to be casual, stomping around the sleigh, pretending to do a pre-flight inspection. Everything was always in place, but it never hurt to check. I stopped beside Donner. "You imbecile," I growled. "How could you possibly come home without Santa?" Donner made a whiny, woofing sound and hung his head down his knees. He was the perfect picture of a devastated reindeer with a depression complex. I didn't buy the act for a minute, but the Wranglers did. "Cruelty to animals," one of them muttered to another. They all gave me a dirty look. Terrific. Donner screws up and comes out smelling like roses, and everybody still hates me. The Wranglers shook their heads sadly and marched towards the air control tower. As soon as their backs were turned, Donner's hind foot went flying, and so did I. "Something wrong?" Marcia asked. She came around the front of the sleigh. I spit out a mouthful of snow. "Nothing," I said with dignity. She raised her eyebrows, but I wasn't about to explain. Besides, she probably wouldn't believe me. She and Donner got along perfectly. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Sure," I muttered. Even though she was worried about Granddad, it wasn't hard to see that Marcia couldn't wait to fly that sleigh. Well, she was pretty good at it. "No fancy stuff," I warned. "Don't worry." We threw our luggage in the back and climbed into the front seat. I stuck my foot under the foot bars and hung onto the side. Marcia tried not to smile, of course. She didn't bother. The foot guards are only really necessary when you do fancy maneuvers like loop-de-loops. But unless I needed to hang my head over the side of the sleigh for another reason, I always kept my feet firmly planted under the protection rails. Well, let's get to the next page. I defy anyone to call me a coward until they've tried it for themselves. Marcia slapped the reins, and we moved smoothly off the ground. My stomach lurched more than the sleigh. Even though the sleigh isn't as jerky as a small plane, my lunch quickly threatened to make a reappearance. I tried to make myself believe that my stomach was simply unhappy with the airline food we'd had on the way to Norway. My stomach didn't believe me. Half an hour into the flight, I had to abandon the safety of the footrails and let my stomach have its revenge. As I settled back into the seat, Marcia was staring straight ahead, as though she hadn't noticed. Such nobility is a pain. "I hope there wasn't anybody beneath us," she said, a deadpan look on her face. Marcia continued, "I think we'd better start carrying airsick bags, just like the airlines." "Do whatever you want," I enunciated each word carefully. My stomach was acting up again. Carry air-sick bags, install a restroom, hire a stewardess, and serve meals. Show an in-flight movie, I don't care. What? A movie? With all this beautiful scenery? She dipped a little to the side so I could see the tundra beneath. I clutched at the side. Better yet, I yelped. Install seatbelts in this stupid contraption. That was it. Seatbelts. A strange expression crossed Marcia's face, and we stared at each other. What if Granddad had fallen out of the sleigh? Chapter 6. Maybe he fell out of the sleigh. What if he's... I started to say. Don't say it, Marcia yelled. Well, he might not be. I mean, he usually flies pretty close to the ground. Right, she agreed firmly. Besides, we don't know for sure that's what happened. No matter what we said, I was scared. And so was Marcia. Granddad wasn't young anymore. If he'd fallen out of the sleigh, he could have broken something. His flight plane across deserted country where there'd be no one to help him. And if it was cold out there, which meant we'd better find him in a big hurry. Grandma met us on the field. She was smiling, not her usual cheery greeting, but more determined. She was trying not to upset us, despite my queasy stomach. I jumped out and gave her a huge hug. Any news? Marcia demanded. No, Grandma's voice quavered, only slightly. I'm glad you're here, kids. Come inside and get warm. I had to admire her. Grandma wasn't about to break down in front of us, but I could tell how glad she was that we had arrived. Now that she'd been alone, the North Pole staff loved my grandparents. Most of them had worked for Santa Claus Inc. for their whole lives. Their parents and grandparents had been employed by the company as well. They were like family. Still, it isn't completely the same. We had an idea, I said, once we were settled in front of the huge fireplace with a hot chocolate and cookies Grandma had waiting for us. We were thinking that maybe, or wondering rather, if it was possible that Granddad might have fallen out of the sleigh. Grandma considered it for a few minutes, then nodded slowly. It's possible he made the flight right after lunch. He usually takes a nap, but he said he wasn't sleepy. If he dozed off, we sat staring into the fire. Well, I said, what are we going to do about it? I'm going to take a look at Granddad's flight plan, Marcia declared. I'll check out the sleigh, I told her. On the way out, I picked up a caramel apple. The place was loaded with food. That was Grandma for you. When she got upset or worried, she started cooking. The apple was for Donner, but don't think I was feeling guilty about what I'd said to him earlier. I wasn't. Besides, he couldn't understand what I'd said. He's just a reindeer. My mind told me that, but I couldn't help thinking that Donner knew exactly what was going on. Anyway, as a peace offering, I brought him the caramel apple. He sniffed it suspiciously, then nearly took my fingers off along with the apple. I went to inspect the sleigh. Not a thing was out of place. The swing door on the side had a latch, and it seemed to be working perfectly. What'd you do? I heard an anguished cry, and looked up to see one of the reindeer wranglers wringing his hands and frantically pulling on Donner's head. What's the matter? I asked, running to the man's side. Is he sick? If Donner was sick, mentally ill to my way of thinking, he might have done something to Granddad. He's got something in his mouth. A sick feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. In his mouth? Yeah, what did you feed him? One of Grandma's caramel apples, I cried. He eats them all the time. The man stuck his glove against Donner's jaw and pulled his mouth open. The apple dropped to the stable floor, the caramel looking rather mashed. Donner's head drooped and he made that whiny woofy sound again. Poor baby. The man gave me a dark look. I'm sure he didn't mean it. Of course not, I gasped. He loves those things. Granddad gives them to him all the time. Maybe Grandma's recipe was different. I don't know what happened. The man sniffed, patted Donner, and walked away. Obviously, he thought I must have had something to do with the near disaster. Something deliberate. I watched him leave. The injustice of it eating at my gut. Why I'd never hurt an animal. At home, my scout troop even collects recyclables to raise money for the local ASPCA. I felt like a scum-sucking pig. A crunching noise reached my ears, and I whirled to face Donner. Without a bit of trouble, chewing it, he was placidly finishing off the apple. I felt like calling the reindeer wrangler back, but decided it wasn't worth it. Besides, Donner wasn't probably just choking again. It's the last caramel apple you'll ever get from me, I said with great dignity. Reindeer who lose Santa Claus don't deserve them. He grunted and glared at me. You can't have it both ways, I insisted. I may be stupid, but I'm not that stupid. Donner stomped around till his rear end faced me, and then, well, let's just say he made his point. All right, so we're going to continue off the next time, reading chapters number 7, The Search Begins. Alright, so remember to subscribe to the Callie and Jordan Squad. Hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any of our videos. Smash that thumbs up button. Share with family and friends. And until next time, peace out.